Hi there, I'm Hillary for Waterlogged on behalf of saltwateraquarium.com, and this is green hair algae, or you might see it referred to online as GHA. That is what's going to be the topic of today's video. So sit back, relax, and grab a pen and paper, and let's get started. Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the different causes of green hair algae. I'm going to tell you some solutions on how to get rid of the green hair algae. And of course, we are going to do a green hair algae cleaning on this tank behind me. I'm going to show you some of my tips on how to manually remove it. So let's jump on in. When it comes to the causes of green hair algae, there's really two main causes. And the first one is nutrients. When I say nutrients, typically if you're looking at water chemistry, you're going to be looking at things like your phosphates and your nitrates. But in layman terms, when you are feeding your tank, you're adding nutrients to your tank. So how often are you feeding? Are you feeding too much? How much are you feeding every time you're adding food to the tank? When you feed, is the food getting stuck in the rockwork on the sand bed and being uneaten by your tank inhabitants? And this is a tricky one. Are you feeding but you don't see any waste in the tank? Maybe it's getting caught in your filtration and you don't see it, but you're not changing your filters often enough. Those nutrients are still in the system and they're still acting as a food source for the green hair algae. So that is the first cause of green hair algae. The second one can be lighting. Now, a lot of times we think about the lights on our tank and you want them to be good for a lifetime, but they aren't always. They do have a lifetime, and when they start to go bad, you don't get those exact wavelengths that you initially had when you first put them on the tank when they're brand new. So as those start to go bad, you might have elevated levels of nutrients in the tank. Something else you should check for when it comes to wavelengths in your light is how much blue do you have on there? Do you have too much? Are your lights on for too long a period of time? If you've got your lights running for 12 hours a day, it's probably way too much. Now, all the light issues don't just originate from the lights that are already placed on your tank. They could actually come from an external source. So if you have your tank situated in front of a window, you could be getting a lot of sunlight in the morning or in the evening, and that could also be contributing to the nutrients that are in your tank from the light. And you want to fix those, and I've got some solutions for you. So you can break down the solutions for getting rid of green hair algae into a couple of different categories. The first one is going to be by chemical means. There's a bunch of different products that are out on the market that you can use to remove green hair algae and lower those nutrients. So things like GFO and media reactors are a good example of this. You can also use biological means to remove the green hair algae. So I say this, I mean things like any of those bacterial products that will help to reduce your nutrients, but I'm also talking about cleanup crew members. One example that comes to mind are sea hares. They do a great job of mowing down the green hair algae that is in your tank. Another method you can use to remove the green hair algae is by mechanically removing them. And that I'm talking about your filter socks. So the filter socks, as the green hair algae floats around in the water, it gets sucked down into your filter, and those filter socks are going to catch it. This is why it's important to make sure you're changing those filters out regularly. Now, the last method that you can use to remove green hair algae, and it's what I'm going to show you today, is to manually remove it. So, to manually remove it, there are a couple of different things that I like to use for my cleaning. Now, the first one is going to be a toothbrush, right? You don't want to use this for anything else. This is a dedicated toothbrush for your tank. And in fact, since you're using it for green hair algae, I would actually toss this after you're done using it. Next thing is going to be a small siphon. Yeah, you could use a large one, but personally, I like to use the small siphon. The reason for using a small siphon is that my goal when I'm cleaning out green hair algae isn't necessarily to remove a specific volume of water, but to remove the green hair itself. So it's still gonna get just as much siphon suctioning power to remove that hair algae, but it's gonna remove the water at a slower rate so I can have more time to get rid of that hair algae. Now, the last thing I'm going to be using is a blade. So you could have a flipper cleaner like this one I've got here behind me, or you could even use something like a credit card or other scraper blade that you might have. Now, these guys are going to be used for the flat surfaces like the glass and maybe even your overflow. That toothbrush that we have is going to be used for getting the green hair algae out of the rockwork and all of those uneven surfaces. If you don't have a toothbrush, something else you could also use is a small bottle brush. All right, let's go ahead and get started on this water change. All right, I've got my flipper cleaner float that I'm going to be using as my blade for this. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to gently put this in. Try not to make a big mess, and then move it over to the side. Now the key for cleaning green hair algae out of the tank is to move super slowly. Because when this comes off, it can float and get in the water column and just move and get situated around the rest of your tank. You don't want to go too fast. So here I've got my siphon hose. I'm going to go ahead and get this started. All right, now that I have it started, what I'm going to do is take my blade and move it along where the hair algae is. Now, as I scrape, I'm gonna have my siphon right at the edge of my scraper so that as the green hair algae is dislodged, it's going to be sucked up by the siphon. Sometimes you might have to kind of scoop it out like you can see here, but boom, all of that was just removed from the tank. So you're gonna wanna go ahead very slowly and repeat this process. Get as much of the hair algae out of the tank as you possibly can. I really feel like the key for this is moving super, super slow. All right, one thing I forgot to mention before I got started is you will need a towel just so that you don't make a mess everywhere. And when you're done with all of the equipment that you're using, make sure that you rinse it off with fresh water really well. You don't want to cross-contaminate any tanks or actually have that hair algae on there and use it again when you have a tank that's clean and doesn't have hair algae in it. You don't want to have a reoccurrence. Now, as you can see, my tank is a little bit cloudy. It still needs to get a little bit more of a deep clean, and honestly, I'm gonna have to clean again a little bit later in the week. So if you too are dealing with green hair algae, expect to have to clean your tank multiple times. This isn't just a one and done fix. Now, I'll leave you with this one last thing. Ultimately, if you don't correct the root cause of why you're getting the green hair algae, you can throw all of these solutions at it all you want, but it's just going to come back. So make sure you address the root cause of why you're getting the green hair algae, and hopefully your battle will be a short one and not a reoccurring one. All right, I wish you the best of luck and the lowest stress-free cleaning of your green hair algae. This has been Hillary for Waterlogged on behalf of saltwateraquarium.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.